Hi there, Hugo here. Thank you so much for all those of you that are listening and waiting for our next episode. Probably the next season, Orphans, Chapter 1, will release by the end of November 2025. If you're listening to this later, it's probably out. I wanted to do a little stopgap episode, and I remembered that a couple of people had written some fanfic. So I found one and asked their permission, and so that's what I'm going to read now. The title is As Real as an Unknowing Bunny by Time Goes By on archiveofourown.org. And thank you to the writer, and thank you for your patience. Hope this is enjoyable.
There were bunnies that were jumping on a trampoline, and I just learned that they weren't real. If a bot can inhabit an unknowing rabbit, it might manufacture the way you make me feel. How do I know that the sky is really sunny? Sometimes it feels like your love is as real as an unknowing bunny. Bunnies by Oliver Richman. I had a dream last night, or at least I think it was a dream. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Not that I have become unable to tell the difference between dreams and reality. I may be old, yes, but my mind is not that far gone yet. But I have found lately that they both have a way of sneaking into each other that makes it tricky to try and separate the real from the not real when recalling the events at a later date. I have also found that just because something is not real does not mean it is untrue. And sometimes the difference between real and not real, or truth and not truth, is so nebulous that it doesn't really matter at all. Like a memory that feels more like a half-remembered dream, vacillating between fact and fiction with each retelling, until the story you tell yourself to fill in the gaps becomes even more real than whatever actually took place. And the facts stop mattering as much as the feelings the experience left you with. This dream was sort of like that, I guess. It did feel real at first in the way that dreams do, when you find yourself in a place not knowing how you got there, logically speaking, but intrinsically knowing the context surrounding your actions. So when I found myself walking down Memorial Park back in Woonsocket, even though I don't know how it was that I ended up wandering outside the children's play area, I knew deep down that I had come here to watch the sunset, seated at the bottom of the blue plastic slide at the edge of the fenced-off park. It was too late for there to still be any kids around, or at least that is what I knew in my dream. I knew there would be no one around except for the pigeons pecking at the grass and the occasional dog walker appearing and disappearing at the edges of my awareness, but I was certain none of them would disturb me. So I sat down on the plastic slide, still warm from baking in the sun all day, and rested my pink bunny backpack over my knees. It was a little uncomfortable. The slide was made for children after all, and I'm still not quite sure why I wasn't sitting on the benches I know for a fact are scattered around the trails and even on the perimeter of the park itself. Perhaps a part of me just really wanted to sit on that worn blue plastic slide. I wouldn't really do it in real life because I know it would be too small and I might not even fit. But it was a dream, and so I was sitting on that slide and was only a little bit uncomfortable because of it. At this point, I couldn't help the evagation of my mind. It was nice weather for thinking, you see, with the late evening breeze picking up and beginning to cool down the warmth of the day. And so I began looking around absent-mindedly as my thoughts wandered elsewhere. The park was nice, all painted metal and plastic in child-friendly colors. There was even a water feature where kids could splash around on the hottest of the year. I like children's parks. I think they're nice places to sit around and observe. That might sound weird when taken out of context, but you know what I mean, is that I like that there are places dedicated to serving the concept of childhood, which is actually a fairly modern concept when you really stop to think about it. And play parks like these are such kinds of places made for children to be, well, themselves. I did not have a childhood, and neither did Agatha. We came from a time when people went from being helpless infants, burdens, to put it bluntly, mouths to feed, to small adults, then full-fledged members of society. I don't think this would have been different even if we'd had parents to take care of us, but being by ourselves certainly did not help in that regard. Do I feel robbed of a childhood? Not really, perhaps. I hadn't really thought about it. I don't usually interact with children, so I suppose the thought had never really crossed my mind before, except in that moment sitting on that little slide looking out at the park and picturing what it was like during the busiest hours of the day. But there were no children in the park, just me, who had never really been a child at all, sitting at the bottom of a small plastic slide. The blue sky above me turned orange as the sun continued to set, but I could not see the sun from where I was sitting. Perhaps it was behind me. But if so, I did not bother to turn around and confirm. I thought that perhaps there was something I needed to see here, something my subconscious or some other force at work in my head was trying to direct me towards in these strange dreams. But if there was, I did not know where to find it. The pigeons continued pecking at the grass, and I did not see any ravens among them. The splash park was not deep enough to hide a shark in its waters. The dog walkers drifted in and out of my periphery, but they were all grayish, brownish blobs that blended into the background, no bright red flashes anywhere to be seen. Then I saw it, a trampoline that I hadn't noticed there before, but knew with that same dream certainty had been there this whole time, and the pair of little blue bunnies jumping up and down within its netted perimeter. I remember looking down at my pink backpack and searching for my blue bunny, but she wasn't there. She had not come into the dream with me, and she was not one of the bunnies jumping on the trampoline. I wasn't surprised by this, but I was a little disappointed. A small part of me thought that if I would see her again anywhere, it would have been inside the dream. Still, it was nice seeing those little rabbits, even if neither of them was my bunny. Their long ears flopped up and down as they bounced on the trampoline like little fluffy balls, unbound by gravity as they seemed to rise higher and higher with each flex of their tiny feet. It was while I was watching them that I saw someone on the other side of the trampoline, almost directly across from me. It was Lucy. I didn't know how to feel about her sudden appearance. It caught me by surprise, but only because I did not get the feeling that she'd always been there, the same way that I got with the trampoline. I hadn't somehow missed her presence from before. She had simply not been there, and then, there she was. Lucy was watching the bunnies too, I think, or perhaps she was watching me. Not that she would have been able to see much from the other side of the trampoline on the other side of the park if that's what she was doing. I thought about getting up and going to her, perhaps to ask how she had found her way inside my dream, but my legs had grown cramped from sitting on the too small slide, and she was so far away I thought perhaps she hadn't seen me at all. So I didn't move from my seat. The bunnies continued hopping, and then Lucy smiled, and with that I knew she wasn't watching the rabbits, she was watching me. I'm not sure exactly how I came to that conclusion, but then again, I'm not sure that matters in a dream. I just know that the way she smiled at me felt a little too nuanced to have been directed at the bouncing bunnies. There was an effort there, in that quirk of her lips, to perhaps dissemble the surprise she felt at seeing me, but I could also tell the overall gesture was born of something genuine, which felt nice since I was also glad to see her, I think, even if it was probably not really her that I was seeing, just my impression of her. It's funny how clear her expression was in my mind, even though she was standing so far away. That's the thing about dreams, I suppose. The little rabbits continued their antics, unknowing and uncaring that their only audience had turned their eyes away from them and towards each other. They didn't need an audience. I don't think, unlike Schrodinger's cat, their existence was not dependent on whether or not they were being perceived, or at least I think that's how the thought experiment went, but I also don't think the bunnies minded being watched really, else they would have stopped by now. It was only a few moments later that I finally decided to stand up and move towards her, to break the cardinal rule of dreaming, which was to acknowledge one was in a dream. But when I did, a strong breeze almost blew me off my feet in protest of my intentions, and I stumbled forward, looking down to try and find my footing on the smooth pebbles scattered around the bottom of the slide, finding it a little harder than normal given the pins and needles that had begun spreading through my legs. When I looked up, she was gone, and the little bunnies were just a pair of leaves that had got trapped inside the trampoline's netting, being battered around by the wind. There is no such thing as real in a dream, but there had never been any bunnies hopping in that trampoline, of that I was certain. Lucy had never been there either. I never saw her smile at me, and I never tried to go up and talk to her. None of it had been real, but it had been true for a little while. Even I wasn't really there, standing on cramping legs from having sat down for too long, pink backpack forgotten on the ground behind me. and I didn't pick my backpack up then, and began walking home as the last tinges of orange and pink in the sky gave way to indigo, and finally the deep blue of night, all the while thinking of what I had seen and whether it meant anything. Perhaps I was too tired and just needed to get some sleep. Where was I going with this? Ah, yes. My dream. I will tell you how it went.